All right, I've got my sewing machine on, so I hope you can still hear me. So I'm going to make some covered boning really quick. And what I have here is a little piece of satin and my boning. And essentially what I'm going to do is sew a little casing for it. I want it to fit nice and snug, but not too tight. So I'm going to use this as my seam allowance here. And I'm just going to sew down the whole length. Now, depending on what I have to work with, I will either make a long strip, or I will do small sections like this if I have just a little piece. And I'm looking at my table here for my guide. Okay, so I'm just going to set it up so that it equals the same width as what I'm working on. I'm going to start with a tack and then sew down my little channel here. Just like that. Okay. And then to turn this, at the end I'm going to close this really quick. Just like that. And then you can use a tube turner. I didn't have one for a long time though, so I kind of do mine like this. I'll actually just stick the boning in the bottom and kind of wiggle it up. It takes a second to get it started. So you can see how long this will take. I have a tube turner now, so you could use that instead. I'm going to tuck it in the seam allowance and then use my fingers to get it up and through. Wrap it around. This part is a little fiddly. And of course, since I'm recording it, it's not going to go smoothly because that's how life works. And then I just got these straight grain because for the most of the time you're not going to have that. Just for the sake of the length of the video, I'm going to use my turner. But normally I just kind of butt it in there and turn it by shoving the boning up inside. But obviously I'm in love with my new tool and it goes really fast. Oops. Again, gotta love the magic of film. Everything is so much sloppier and graceless when you're trying to do it for recording. Okay, so there's my little channel, and then I'm gonna just cut that stopper off. I really only put that there because I need something hard to turn it in. Now you can press this out if you want, but if you cut it to a good width, the boning will push the sides of the tube out, so you really don't need to press it. Now, depending on what your situation is, if you can attach this to the dress without having to, like if you can sew through everything, you can sew this on the dress of the channel and then insert the boning down it, which is a really nice option. Some dresses you can't do that on anyway, so you might as well just cover the boning. And what I'm going to do is make sure I have a good seam allowance in here. And I sew mine to the dress like this so that the wearer sees the pretty side and not the side with the seam. And I'll still straighten it up so it looks nice. If it's a sheer bodice, you still want to be able to make it look nice if somebody's looking at it from the front. I don't put my seam allowance on the side because I feel like it's a little thick. And then I'm going to trim off the bottom here. What I like to do is take my little snips and I'm going to poke my seam allowance down inside. And I'm going to try to poke it to the inside of the boning. So I want all the bulk to sit on the back side where the seam allowance is. So that way the prettiest side where she's seeing it on the inside of the dress is what's showing. Just like that. And then I will actually run the machine over that so it's like a crisp edge. And same thing down here. So I'm just going to hold these and poke it down just like that. So it makes a nice square crisp unit. And depending on what you're doing, you can stitch around this so that it looks nice and then apply it by hand. You can sew this all the way through if the dress style allows for it. If it's covered in beads, you know, That's a thing that exists too. That happens. You can just apply it by hand with a blind stitch. Sometimes I do just want to stitch around it so that it looks really nice and crisp, and I'll just do that now so you can see what that looks like. Going nice and slow so it looks good. And then I can still hand apply this. Sometimes I just like the top stitching so that it looks really clean regardless. They don't need to know exactly how it was sewn on. And it's still sturdy even with the hand stitching. So there we go. Let me see if I can really get that in the light. So it's pretty nice and crisp. And so that's how I'll actually apply my boning, and then just make sure you have it. I usually do, I didn't look at this piece. I usually look at making sure I have it facing the right way, but this piece is pretty straight. Sometimes, you know, your boning, if it's close to the center of the coil, is really rounded. I'll make sure I put that in the right direction towards the body instead of out, because if you put it the round side out, she'll look squat. But this guy looks pretty nice. And this is how it looks without any ironing, so I feel like that's a really nice one. My favorite thing is when everything's tight in the edge. You can feel the boning everywhere. It's just all nice and even. Isn't she juicy? So yeah, that's how I do my boning units. I'll usually cut what I need for the dress and then cut a long strip and get these all prepared and then lay them onto the inside of the dress and hand stitch them in place.